Hello, it's DBJ again, and today's Third Pillar Thursday, I'm kind of combining with a suggestion from a viewer, someone brand new in my circles. Gnu suggested we talk about thieves guilds, and I was like, well, I don't know how to fit this in, so but that never stopped me before. So Third Pillar Thursdays usually I reserve for that third pillar of gaming. You know, you've got combat as your first pillar, social interactions as your second pillar, and then the environment exploration as the third pillar. And I think the two go together. And there's one thing going on now here in the States in the Midwest is we've been getting it's been extremely humid and we're getting a ton of rain from tropical storm Alberto. So I think it all kind of combines together. So let's go back in time, give a little overview, and anyone who would is joining in, they can join in after when I give this little step into the past. So thieves guilds come from a time when um, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, second edition Dungeons and Dragons, each class had a form of obligation under their class type. So each class had a relationship with a larger organization. So um, paladins had like knighthoods, bards had bardic colleges, wizards had conclaves of sorts. Um, yeah, and thieves had thieves guilds, and it was expected that thieves would, in their role as criminals, would I wouldn't call it a tithe. They owed a tribute to the master thieves that were above them, and then when you gained a particular level, you would create your own thieves guild. Fighters would create their own castles. Clerics would start their own religious orders. Those kind of things. Um, Due to uh, a number of things, Dungeons and Dragons was under attack and has been under attack for many years, with ebbs and flows about how it courts evil behavior and all those kind of things. So the thief turned into the rogue, and the rogue has a little bit more of a cinematic flair to it. Someone who's um, more of an individual that um, um, takes life by the horns and just has fun, as opposed to someone who makes their living stealing stuff and even getting experience points for how much gold they've acquired. So when the thief went to rogue, I believe that that's kind of when the thief's guild shifted away, because then that removes the obligation of being attached to a criminal organization. And along with that, a lot of the other classes, they remove those, level 9, level 10, you're about to retire factors in the game. Higher level play was introduced in a lot more of the versions after second edition, 3.5. And lastly, a lot of the guilds and those organizations have become factions. All right, enough history. So thieves guilds, can we still use them, and why don't we use them? Well, first of all, we can absolutely use them. So I'm picturing follow me here, but I'm picturing thieves guilds being in like a big major city, a Harn, Lankmar. Um, if you have played old versions of um, Magic the Gathering, there was a play set where there was a world that was the entire world was a big city and incorporated everything from um, forests growing in alleyways and things like that. There were knights flying on griffins that had to land on top of castles and things like that, rooftops and such. So thieves guilds can and absolutely should represent something, especially in a large city, and they can also become adversaries and allow the players to have more of a social encounter with things where normally it just turns into a straight up fight. So, for example, you could increase the intelligence of, say, some of your humanoid and not so humanoid monsters and make them more social and have them part of these guilds that are in a city. For example, you could have ghouls and you could have gentlemen ghouls that go around the city and they collect the dead bodies of the people that are killed, right? Diseased, they're homeless, they've been knifed in a back alley, and they walk around with their carts collecting the dead um, for a few coin, maybe make some dead bodies disappear. And I just am, even though it doesn't fit for medieval style play, I just imagine them with, being controlled by a ghoul master with a top hat and nice clothing, but it's still like dirty, probably stolen from a person that's been buried. And this person is very gentlemanly like and bows to you after getting a few copper and taking the diseased bodies away um, for their consumption or nasty experiments or selling those bodies to alchemists and wizards that live in dark alleys and in empty spaces. But thieves guilds do not necessarily have to just be this generalized criminal organization, right? They could be specialist assassins, pickpockets, spies, um, poisoners, information brokers, specialists in disguise, or getting and creating false documents, those kind of things. So thieves guilds can absolutely be used. And there was an old one-shot game that Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice ran, and about the Umber Cloaks, and each of the players got the chance to introduce themselves after having finished um, a, a mission as an assassin. And not all of the player characters played rogues, mage or fighter or barbarian or whatever, but all under the auspice of being like these dark spies and assassins and killers. And I think that's great because you could really reshape just about every no, yes, you can reshape every class to be like these dark shadowy figures. And I could imagine a dark druid would be, someone who uses bats and rats and maybe has a black wolf with them, and they live in the alleyways and sewer systems, or patrol across the rooftops, and they use the environment and shape the environment to um, the way they want, and they use the forgotten areas in the city where there's vines growing and mold and fungus as their weapons. And even a paladin, in many ways Batman could be a paladin, especially a paladin of vengeance with the oath of vengeance. I mean, a paladin with the oath of vengeance absolutely is like a dark avenger. And there's nothing saying that a paladin has to have like be all gold and bright and such. Many people get beaten down in their chosen lifestyle. Batman didn't choose to be a dark knight. He lives in a city like Gotham that forces him to become dark and use dark methods. And so I can, as a game master, I would absolutely allow a paladin to sneak around and be dark and start lying and stealing and threatening people and torturing people to get what he wants to save a city that has fallen into um, its criminal underbelly. So, but thieves guilds are these guilds can also use blackmail, and they could be go along the entire strata of society. So you have yourselves the absolute deep and darkest versions. This is reminding me of the movie John Wick Chapter 2, where you had the homeless people that were hanging around, but they were actually a large network. And then you have the rich elite who also have their own network of spies and assassins. And you could have this dichotomy of social social strata where the street level, the underbelly, the mob, the organized crime is on one level, and then you have the elite, the royals, the blue bloods, the the baronies, the duchess, the those who are in have a royal status also use their dark underbelly of connections to get things done, eliminating their enemies and spies and hunting people down, having them disappear. And of course, you have to have people um, who have a ton of vices. Now, I'm sure those of you who do not play Dungeons and Dragons exclusively are probably thinking of a very popular indie game known as Blades in the Dark. If you have not checked out Blades in the Dark, please do. Get on YouTube, find a bunch of live plays, get some reviews on it. Blades in the Dark is a game that absolutely embraces and cherishes the idea of being a criminal. As a matter of fact, Blades in the Dark has a mechanism where the gang, your gang, is part has its own character sheet and gives each person bonuses. A kind of imagine having everyone having their own player character, but then there is a separate character sheet that everyone gets to benefit from. So an example would be instead of you picking your background, everyone else has picks the same background and gets the benefit of having that background. Instead, in this game, it's called the gang, and the gang can have specific connections. For every beneficial relationship they have with another gang, they have uh, a negative and adversarial relationship, and you pick specialties for your gang. So you could have places to hide. Like I said, you could have connections with the authorities, and the authorities, the police and the security. They're like their own gang, basically. Um, um, you have notoriety for your gang. You're known and feared for certain things. You also have a specialty, whether it's laundering money or kidnapping, intimidation, arson, those kind of things. And so you start to shape your gang. And I believe it is extremely easy to port that over into fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons if that's your game of choice. Um, but also with thieves guilds, and of course this is Third Pillar Thursday, so I can't escape this. um, we've been having humid days and a ton of rain, and it just makes me think there's nothing like the idea of having to brown down while you're walking down a dark alley. The rain's pouring down, it's dirty, it's puddling, it's filling everywhere. It forces people to go inside. It just creates this misery and such. And rain itself can have a great impact in your city exploration, right? So I did a video on roof running and running down alleys and using a narrative effect to just have a couple of skill rolls, in addition to which you can use a ton of things. So when it comes to thieves guilds and cities, here's a great opportunity to reskin those traps and those layers and those puzzles that I love talking about when it comes to being your self-appointed third pillarist. Uh, Pit traps can absolutely be reskinned as, or just used simply as a pit trap, or reskinned as the um, the soggy, rotted ceiling as you're running across a rooftop, right? It's because a pit trap just basically is this hidden thing and you fall through it. So it could be a skylight, it could be a rotted roof, a collapsing ceiling is the same thing. You take a look in the book, there's a collapsing ceiling. Well, it could be rotted timbers above your head, it could be uh, a collapsing roof when you're walking down an alley. It could even be on purpose where you have to meet a contact in the alley, and if you double cross them, they will dump trash and debris and metal items and nails stuck through floorboards just dumped on your head. trapping you in the alleyway or something. Same thing with like the net trap and those kind of things. There's a big net and it could be hidden in the ground or above you, and they can just drop it down on your head. The authorities could use all of those things as well. And of course, getting in touch with the head of a thieves guild, they're not just going to let you walk up and not be protected, right? There's a reason um, criminals want to use a bathhouse, because you have to go through a couple layers of security, and then you have to disrobe. You got to take your clothes off. You're not going to come in here with a weapon and armored and sneak a knife, or to bring in your automatic weapon or your guns or something like that. Your great sword. No, take your clothes off. Let's get in the steam bath. Let's get in the water. Now we can talk, right? So, um, your spell components are left at the door. You're stuck with, a towel around your waist, um, your verbal and somatic spells, and maybe your barbarian and fighter and monk are probably the best here. Your rogue could probably come up with a couple of things they can do. But yeah, that's your own thing. Maybe even your familiar has to be left outside. There's a reason why they are hidden. You can have a thieves guild. Of course, the classic is the thieves guild in the sewer system. You can have a pathway that is so confusing that only a minotaur can remember how to get back out. There could be a way to flood the tunnels to escape the authorities and to trap adversaries. Um, and of course, it's dark and dank. You can have people have to swim through or trudge through waist deep thick water with maybe an ooze trapped behind a couple of bricks, and the enemy can just like pull the bricks out and let the black ooze, or the black pudding gray ooze, etc., amongst that family. The jellies, the gelatinous cubes come down and protect them and their criminal enterprise. You can also have, in addition to having those things, there can be a ton of agents for criminals, bodyguards, minotaurs, ogres, hill giants. You can have doppelgangers and mimics being used, even using haunted areas like ghosts and such, and banshees as defenses for criminal organizations. But sometimes you might even have a place where, like, for example, you could have a water tower type idea where the criminal, you meet him in the water tower, but anybody that makes a false move just takes his foot or hits a switch and the whole floor drops out, and it's like a pit trap and drops him 30 feet down onto the rooftop and allows the criminal to jump up on top of the roof. Um, Use a horn to call for a giant rock or a griffin or a hippogriff or its manticore and fly away or something like that. So you can have tons of fun. And with the rain, rain likes to wash away things and puddle and flood. And so you can have those animals with keen senses. Maybe there are guards, and the guards run around the city with um, guard dogs that can sniff out spell components and lycanthropes and other things that are easy to smell to root out criminals and evil. But when it rains, washes away the scent, so those keen senses might have some disadvantage on them. Also, torrential rain limits sight lines. Long range attacks, and you might not be able to see too much. Same thing with noise. You get some thunder and lightning, and maybe someone can't hear you, or you're trying to communicate with your allies, and you better use some of that thieves can't. Maybe that a version of hand signals and sign language to communicate, because no one can verbally hear you over the thunder and lightning. There's also a chance of being hit by lightning. Probably pretty low, unless you want to make this more of an arcane storm. And running around in your plate mail and chain mail might not be the smartest thing in the world. Also, the rain can flood areas, and here's where you can change the environment. So the player characters go down into the deep sewers, but you foreshadow the fact that the rainwater is pouring down here. So they go through a tunnel, and it's only ankle deep. When they come back, it's waist deep. If they get trapped behind an iron grate, maybe it's starting to fill up and then they have to swim their way to the surface. Absolutely a tension creating scenario right there. So rain, torrential rain, like I said, also can wash away those burning effects. Maybe it washes away poisons off of weapons, um, washes away acids that are being thrown, washes away alchemist fire that's been thrown, reduces the burning effects of burning hands or flaming sphere or all flame attacks. A fireball doesn't do as much damage because of the torrential rain. Or if there's a continuous burning effect, maybe it halves it. So you can apply disadvantage to a number of those things, reducing the damage, adding resistance to most things that are, in the rain. And of course, you can have enemies and allies, of course, um, hiding in shallow water with maybe breathing using a reed, a hollow reed or pipe as a breathing tube, and then spring up and pull people down into the water, and uh, adding that as an additional element into a fight, so someone can get pushed or shoved into shallow water or grappled and pulled down and suffocated. So anyway, um, to round this out, thieves guilds absolutely should make and can make a comeback. It's just trying to reskin them. They don't necessarily have to be absolutely black and white criminal organizations. You can have a number of factions that are hidden, that have their own agendas. And the great thing about having a faction with its own agenda is that they don't necessarily have to be an enemy, but they can be an adversary, right? And that it is splitting hairs, but a faction doesn't need to be in total opposition to the player's goals. What could happen is they can run side by side. For example, the player characters are adventurers, and their only goal is to acquire gold, say, and treasure. And so the organization may be a good organization. Maybe they're hidden. They're rebels. They're insurgents. They are trying to save the city from an oppressive government that sneaks people away with their secret police and assassinations. But in order for them to operate, they also need funds. They need to pay off guards so that they can let out their members who've been arrested through a political for political reasons to shut them up. Maybe they need the money to, like I said, with bribes or to buy weapons and armor because they don't have the resources to do it. And it's not that they don't want the player characters to hoard the gold. Well, maybe it is they don't want them to hoard the gold. But if they can get an ally of the players and split the gold, now they run side by side. Hey, yes, we'll go with you to sneak into the Baron and the Baroness's uh, castle to steal her tapestries and um, ornate items and sell them on the black market because we could use that because we need to buy medicines, right? And then you can have a ton of other micro missions. Well, you need medicines. Well, here's what we'll do. How about we gather you your medical supplies for your rebels, and then your rebels can help us sneak in because you have connections to get into the royal kitchen or something like that. So you can play all kinds of ideas as far as that, and um, thieves guilds also allow you to have more obligations and have more social interactions, making deals, making promises, and of course there's always the problem of making a deal with the devil and befriending one organization and automatically becoming the enemy of another organization. So ending this off with my third pillarisms, um, absolutely the rain. You can use rain to make slick surfaces, especially those sloped rooftops, um, reducing sight lines, getting rid of scent. Noise is a possibility, extinguishing fires. and it is also a precursor to other things: high winds, thunderstorms, um, just those, using it as a foreshadow for other events. And you can even use this narratively. For example, let's say there's a vampire clan that is a operates as a faction, and when the dark storms come in periodically, they're able to walk the streets, or maybe some vampire spawn are able to run out during the lulls, as it covers the sun, and they're able to run around during the daylight and have certain missions accomplished. Same thing with dark elves. Maybe the sunlight hurts their eyes and they stay underground, but when it rains, this is an opportunity for them to come to the surface and really wreak havoc and wreak shop amongst the population. So um, in summary, thieves guilds, they really work. Maybe they're called factions now, but there's no, but whatever. You can reskin a ton of your humanoids, and of course, you can layer it over with the environment: rain, um, tight places, dark alleys, and of course, can't forget the debris that's left around in a dark city. You have a dark alley, you have climbing surfaces, um, you, the the classic chase, right? The chase down the alleys where you have athletics and acrobatics checks to jump over fences, climb up boxes, scale up and down fire escapes. I know that's a more of a modern thing, but you can still use them in your medieval cities if you wish. Scaling up and down ladders, knocking over fruit carts. All those things can be possible and be used for within your game to change the environment. And if your players are not used to doing that, then have your enemies start doing those things, and then maybe the players will catch on. So if the enemy's running away, the ogre and the 12 orcs are part of an enforcer squad, and the ogre picks up a large crate and decides to throw it at one of the player characters, or when they run down an alley, decides to knock over some crates and boxes to get it in their way. Use that to create difficult terrain. Use that to have to make a deck save, or slip and fall in the rotted vegetables that spill out or spill forth or something. Um, those kind of things. So anyway, I'm DBJ. Thanks for checking out these videos. Again, I'm your third pillarist. I'm a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. My baby, my little brainchild, is the cinematic environs. Check that out. We are on Drive Through RPG. We also have our own Facebook group. You can also find me in many places as DBJ online. I'm Dave Brian Jackson, and I am a fairly regular poking my head in the Facebook. Don't get in the G plus too much, Google plus too much, but I guess I really should do that as well. But reach out. Hope to spark some ideas for you guys. Thank you very much. Gotta head off to work.